Since the original title you provided wasn't allowed, I offered safe versions, but you have not selected one or given a new title. To avoid delaying your work, I will proceed with a safe version automatically, based on this revised title." The poor widow asked, "Will you help my giant daughter?" Only one rancher stepped forward. Below is Part 1 fully expanded. About 1,500 words. In simple, clean, engaging English, third-person style, no headings, no harmful content, no boring parts. Part 1. Expanded to 1,500 words. The story begins in a small, quiet village surrounded by long stretches of open land, dusty fields, and lonely dirt roads. People here lived simple lives, waking up with the sun and going to sleep when the sky turned dark. Almost everyone knew each other, and even the smallest change in a family's life quickly became a topic for the whole village. In that calm place lived a poor widow named Shahnaz, who had faced more hardships than most people could imagine. She had lost her husband many years ago, and since then, life had never been easy. Still, she carried herself with strength, working to keep her home standing and raising her only daughter, Mira. Mira was different from the other girls in the village. She was unusually tall, much taller than the boys her age, and her height made her stand out wherever she went. Children stared at her. Grown-ups whispered behind her back. And visitors often looked twice before they realized she was just a young village girl who happened to be big-built. Over time, these reactions made her shy and withdrawn. She avoided the village market and preferred staying inside, helping her mother with housework, feeding the animals, or sitting quietly under the neem tree behind their house. Despite her size, Mira had a soft, calm nature. She never raised her voice, never complained, and always tried to reduce her mother's burden. But Shahnaz worried constantly. She worried for her daughter's future, her safety, and mostly, her loneliness. In their village, people married young, and most girls found a partner before reaching adulthood. But Mira had grown year after year, taller and broader than everyone, and soon parents began refusing proposals without even meeting her. They feared their sons would feel overshadowed, embarrassed, or simply unable to adjust. Shahnaz heard comments like, "She is too big," "People will laugh," or, "Our son will look like a child next to her." Every rejection carried a little more pain. Not just for Mira, but for her mother too. Yet Shahnaz never gave up hope. She believed that somewhere, someone with a kind heart would understand her daughter's worth. Someone would see past appearance and notice the goodness inside. One early autumn morning, Shahnaz woke up with a heavy heart. She had spent the entire night thinking about Mira's future, feeling the weight of time pressing down on her shoulders. She walked outside and looked at the land, stretching into the horizon. A thin breeze carried the scent of dry soil. She saw Mira cleaning the courtyard, her long shadow falling across the ground. The girl moved slowly, lost in her own thoughts. Shahnaz felt a sharp ache inside her chest. She knew she had to do something, anything, to change their situation. The widow made a decision she had never imagined she would make. She would go to the ranchers, who lived on the outskirts of the village, men who worked with animals, stayed close to the land, and understood physical strength. Maybe one of them would see Mira differently. Maybe a man who lived a tough life would appreciate someone who could help. Someone who would stand by him in every season. Through rains and heat. Through storms and droughts. She gathered her courage and prepared herself to walk from one farmhouse to another, speaking honestly, even if it meant facing humiliation. It took Shahnaz 3 hours to reach the first ranch house. The sun was rising higher, and her feet were aching from the long walk. She knocked on the wooden door, her heart pounding. A middle-aged rancher opened the door, wiping sweat from his forehead. He looked at her with curiosity. "What brings you here?" he asked. Shahnaz swallowed hard and told him everything about her life, about Mira, about her daughter's gentle nature despite her unusual size. She asked with a trembling voice if he would consider meeting Mira, just to see her as a person, not as a set of measurements or a figure to be judged. The rancher shifted uncomfortably, avoiding her eyes. He muttered something about people in the village talking, about how others would react. Then he shook his head. Shahnaz nodded silently, understanding yet feeling her heart drop. She thanked him and left. The next rancher she approached, listened politely but refused quickly. "She is a good girl, I'm sure," he said. "But people will laugh at me." His words stung more than he realized. The third rancher barely let her finish speaking. By the time Shahnaz reached the fourth farmhouse, the sun was burning overhead, and her throat was dry. Dust clung to her clothes, and her legs felt heavy. She almost turned back, but then she told herself she wasn't only walking for herself. She was walking for Mira. The fourth ranch house belonged to a man named Amir, known in the village not just for his cattle and his strong work ethic, but also for his calm, respectful nature. He had a reputation for being helpful and fair, someone who never mocked or belittled others. The villagers said he had the patience to tame even the most stubborn animal and the heart to help even strangers. Amir was outside repairing a broken fence when Shahnaz approached him. He looked up as she arrived and offered her a seat. Seeing that she seemed tired from walking under the harsh sun, unlike the others, he did not rush her. He waited, silently, giving her time to breathe and gather her thoughts. When Shahnaz finally began speaking, her voice trembled, but she didn't hide anything. She talked about her struggles, her fears, her daughter's loneliness, and the dreams she had once imagined for Mira. Amir listened, without interrupting. His expression remained thoughtful, never judgmental. He asked about Mira's personality, her interests, how she treated people, and what she hoped for in life. Shahnaz was startled. No one had asked these questions before. Everyone else had only cared about Mira's size, not who she actually was. After listening quietly, Amir leaned back and looked toward the open fields. The light breeze carried the soft rustling of grass. He seemed to be thinking deeply. Then he turned to Shahnaz and said something she didn't expect to hear. "I don't judge people by how they look. If your daughter is as kind as you say, I would like to meet her." "Howard Mozid? I would like to meet her." The widow felt her eyes fill with tears. After so many rejections, her heart had grown used to disappointment. She almost couldn't believe someone had finally agreed to at least meet Mira without fear or prejudice. Amir assured her that he wasn't making the decision lightly. He understood the expectations and the whispers that might follow, but he believed that a person's character mattered more than height or size. He promised Shahnaz that he would visit their home in the next few days, not with any commitment, but with an open mind and a respectful intention. As Shahnaz began her long walk back home, she felt lighter than she had in years. Her steps were still slow, but her heart carried a quiet hope. She imagined Mira smiling again, laughing openly the way she used to when she was younger. She imagined a future where her daughter wasn't judged for her appearance but appreciated for her heart. The sun was beginning to set when she reached the village, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Mira saw her mother approaching and rushed to help her inside. Worried by how tired she looked, Shahnaz sat down, holding her daughter's hand gently. She didn't tell her everything yet, but she gave her a warm smile and said softly, "Today, something good happened." Mira didn't know what that meant, but for the first time in a long while, she felt something shift inside a small, warm spark of hope. Part 2 begins with Amir keeping his promise. 2 days had passed since Shahnaz visited him, and during those 2 days, he found himself thinking about Mira more often than he expected. He had never met her, yet something about the widow's honesty touched his heart. He had seen many people in the village judge others without knowing them, and he disliked such behavior. He believed everyone deserved a fair chance. Still, he wondered what Mira must feel like, living her life being constantly compared, stared at, and misjudged. These thoughts made him more determined to see her with his own eyes, and to understand who she truly was. On the third morning, after finishing his early work on the ranch, Amir washed up, changed into a clean shirt, and prepared to walk toward the village. It was a simple visit, but somehow it felt important. He wasn't going there with a promise or decision. He was simply going with respect, and that alone made the journey meaningful. The sun was soft, the air was cool, and the sky was clear, a perfect morning that carried a strange sense of calm. Meanwhile, inside the widow's small house, Mira was busy grinding flour on the stone grinder. She had no idea her life was about to change. She didn't know her mother had walked miles days ago, or that someone had agreed to meet her without fear or hesitation. Shahnaz had not told her anything because she didn't want to raise false hopes. Too many times in the past, someone showed interest only to back out later, leaving Mira heartbroken. The widow didn't want that pain again. She decided she would speak after Amir came. As the morning went on, the soft sound of the grinder filled the air. Mira hummed quietly, lost in her simple chores. Outside, the courtyard was clean, the clay walls looked warm in the sunlight, and the smell of chai brewed in a tin kettle spread through the house. It was an ordinary day, until a shadow appeared at the entrance. Amir stopped at the gate for a moment. He wasn't nervous, but he wanted to behave respectfully. He knocked gently on the wooden frame. Shahnaz, who had been preparing roti dough, looked up in surprise. She hurried outside, wiped her hands on her dupatta, and greeted him with gratitude shining in her eyes. She invited him in, but Amir waited for her permission to step inside, not wanting to appear rude. When he entered the small house, his eyes moved across the room, noticing the modest furniture, the clean floor, and the warmth that filled the air. It wasn't wealth that made a home, it was peace. And this home had it. Then his gaze fell on Mira, who was still busy grinding flour with her back partially turned. Shahnaz called out gently, "Mira, Beta, we have a guest." Mira turned slowly. She didn't recognize Amir, but she recognized the look in her mother's eyes, something hopeful, something fragile. She wiped her hands, stood up, and greeted him politely. When she stood, Amir was taken aback, not by fear or shock, but by how strong yet gentle she looked at the same time. She was taller than most men in the village, yes, but her face had innocence, kindness, and a softness that made her features calm rather than intimidating. Amir had expected someone shy or fearful, but Mira met him with quiet dignity. She did not try to shrink herself or hide her height. She stood straight and confident. And that, more than anything, impressed him. Shahnaz offered Amir a seat, and Mira served him chai. Everything felt respectful and simple. Amir thanked her softly, noticing how careful she was in placing the cup, making sure not to spill a drop. It told him a lot about her nature. She did everything with patience and care. After a few moments of silence, Amir finally spoke. He asked Mira about her daily routine, her interests, her responsibilities. He didn't ask about her size or appearance. He asked about her life. Mira answered softly, surprised that someone actually cared to know her as a person. She explained the tasks she helped with at home, how she tended to their animals, how she liked the quiet of early mornings, and how she enjoyed repairing things around the house. She spoke slowly, choosing her words carefully, but her sincerity never wavered. Amir listened attentively. He realized she wasn't just kind. She was hardworking. She didn't complain about her life despite its difficulties. She carried burdens silently, the way people made of strong character often did. Shahnaz watched them with her heart racing. She prayed silently that Amir would see Mira the way she saw her, a gentle, honest girl trapped inside a body others misunderstood. She hoped he would look beyond the obvious and notice the deeper truths. After some time, Amir asked if he could see the small garden behind their house. He wanted to continue the conversation privately, to understand Mira without her mother worrying. Shahnaz agreed instantly, though she stayed near the doorway, pretending to be busy. Outside, the sun filtered through the neem leaves, creating soft shadows on the ground. Mira walked ahead, her long steps quiet and steady. Amir followed, admiring how natural she seemed in her environment. When they reached the garden, they both stopped near a small patch of vegetables. Amir broke the silence gently. "You work hard," he said. "I can see that." Mira lowered her eyes shyly. "It is our home. I do what I can." "There is no shame in being strong," Amir added. In my work, strength is a blessing. Mira didn't know how to respond. She wasn't used to compliments. She was used to whispers, stares, or nervous laughter. But here stood a man speaking to her as if her strength was something to admire, not hide. For a moment, she felt a warmth she hadn't felt in years, a feeling of being understood. Amir asked her simple questions about the seeds she planted, the animals she fed, and the work she enjoyed the most. Mira answered each question clearly. She found it surprisingly easy to talk to him. He did not rush her. He did not look uncomfortable. He treated her exactly as he would treat any other person, maybe even with more respect. When they returned inside, Shahnaz served lunch. The atmosphere was calm but full of unspoken questions. After the meal, Amir thanked them warmly and prepared to leave. Before stepping out, he paused and looked at both mother and daughter. "I need some time to think," he said honestly. "But I am glad I came today." Shahnaz nodded respectfully. She didn't pressure him. She knew decisions made in haste rarely lasted. She only hoped that what he saw and felt today would stay in his heart. After he left, Mira turned to her mother with a confused but hopeful expression. "Amy, who was he?" Shahnaz finally told her everything about her long walk, the ranchers who refused, and the one man who agreed to meet Mira without judgment. Mira listened quietly, her eyes filling with emotion. She couldn't believe someone had come all this way just to see her for who she was. That night, Mira couldn't sleep. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering what Amir thought of her. Did he see her as a burden? Or did he see her as a normal girl trying her best? The thought that someone might actually consider her worth knowing made her heart beat fast with nervous excitement. On the other side of the village, Amir also sat awake in his room. He replayed the visit in his mind, the kindness in Mira's eyes, her gentle voice, her hard work, and her quiet strength. He had never met anyone like her. She was different, yes. But different did not mean wrong. If anything, it made her more remarkable. He knew he had a decision to make, one that could change many lives. People might gossip. Some might laugh. But he also knew something else. Real happiness never came from following the crowd. Real happiness came from understanding someone's heart. As the night deepened, a soft certainty began forming inside him, growing like a small flame lighting up a dark room. And just like that, the story took its next quiet step toward a future no one had expected. Part 3 begins a few days after Amir's visit. Life in the village moved forward as usual. But inside both homes, Amir's peaceful ranch and Shahnaz's small clay house, something had changed. Even though nothing had been decided yet, a quiet expectation filled the air. Amir continued his daily work, repairing fences, feeding the animals, and checking on his cattle. But his thoughts repeatedly returned to Mira. He remembered her shy smile, her honesty, and the calm strength in her voice. Every detail stayed in his mind more clearly than he expected. On the fourth evening after the visit, Amir sat on the wooden bench outside his house. The sun was setting behind the hills, glowing orange and red like a burning horizon. He watched the sky turn deeper shades of purple, and he knew the time had come to stop thinking and start acting. He couldn't remove Mira's image from his heart. He respected her, he admired her, and most importantly, he felt she deserved happiness. Something she had been denied by so many people, for reasons that were never her fault. He decided that the next morning, he would visit her home again. This time, not just to talk, but to share what he truly felt. The night was quiet, but Amir didn't sleep much. He kept imagining how the conversation would go. Would Mira be shy? Would Shahnaz cry in relief? Would the villagers whisper and judge? He knew they probably would. People always had opinions, but he reminded himself that he had lived his entire life honestly, and no one else had the right to guide his choices. Meanwhile, at Shahnaz's house, Mira sat near the small window, brushing her long hair in slow strokes. She, too, couldn't forget Amir's visit, his gentle nature, his respectful words, and the way he listened made her feel valued in a way she had never felt before. She wondered what he thought of her now. She had no expectation that he would return, but somewhere deep in her heart, she wished he would. Not because she hoped for anything grand, but because he made her feel like more than just a girl who stood out. That night, Shahnaz watched her daughter quietly. She could see the spark in Mira's eyes, a spark she hadn't seen for years. It filled her with hope, but also fear, the fear that hopes could break. She prayed silently that whatever happened next would bring peace, not pain. When morning arrived, the village woke to the familiar sounds of birds and the distant mooing of cattle. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of fresh earth. Mira swept the courtyard, her mind drifting toward Amir again. She tried to push the thoughts away, reminding herself that dreams often end in disappointment, but her heart didn't listen as easily as her mind. Around mid-morning, Shahnaz was kneading dough when she heard footsteps outside the gate. She thought it might be a neighbor, but when she stepped out and saw Amir standing there, her breath caught in her throat. For a moment, she couldn't speak. She simply stared at him, her eyes widening with surprise. Amir greeted her politely and asked if he could talk to her for a few minutes. Shahnaz nodded quickly, and her hands trembled slightly as she called Mira. When Mira walked out of the house and saw Amir, she stopped in her tracks. Her heart seemed to skip a beat. She didn't expect him to return so soon, if at all. For a moment, she lowered her gaze, unsure how to greet him. But Amir spoke first. "I hope it's not a bad time," he said kindly. Mira shook her head softly. "No. It's fine." Amir asked if they could sit in the courtyard. Shahnaz brought a mat, placed it under the neem tree, and then stepped back respectfully to give them space. She stayed close enough to hear if needed, but far enough not to interrupt. Amir took a deep breath before he began speaking. He wasn't nervous, but he wanted to choose his words carefully. "This wasn't a small matter. I thought a lot after meeting you," he said, looking at Mira with sincerity. "You are honest, hardworking, and respectful. These are qualities that matter more than anything else to me." Mira's cheeks warmed. She didn't know how to respond, so she stayed quiet, listening. Amir continued, choosing each word slowly. "People in the village judge quickly. They talk without understanding. But I don't care about that. I care about living a life with someone I can respect and trust." Shahnaz held her breath as she listened from the doorway. Then, Amir said something that made the world feel suddenly still. "If you and your mother agree, I am willing to build a future with you." Mira's eyes widened, and she stared at him in disbelief. She had spent her entire life being avoided, judged, and rejected for reasons she couldn't control. Now, someone was sitting before her, offering acceptance instead of judgment. It felt unreal. She looked at her mother, whose eyes were already glistening with tears. Shahnaz stepped forward, unable to hold back her emotions. "Amir, are you truly sure?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You know how people talk. You know how they behave." Amir nodded calmly. "I am sure. I live my life by my choices, not by other people's opinions." Mira felt a strange mix of happiness and fear. Happiness because someone finally saw her as a human being, not a problem. Fear because she didn't want to become a burden. She hesitated for a long moment, and then spoke softly. "I don't want you to face trouble because of me." Amir's answer came instantly, without doubt or hesitation. "You won't be trouble. You will be my companion." The way he said it so firm, so steady, made Mira feel safe. She had never heard such words before. Words that didn't make her feel small or strange. She felt seen. Truly seen. Shahnaz sat down slowly, her hands covering her mouth. Tears streamed down her face, tears of relief, joy, and gratitude. She had prayed for someone like Amir. Someone with a good heart, someone brave enough to look beyond appearances. Amir sat with them for a long time that day. They talked about simple things, daily routines, responsibilities, and what life at the ranch was like. He explained that he wanted partnership, understanding, and teamwork. Not perfection, not an image that pleased others, The sun had climbed high when Amir finally stood up to leave. He promised he would return in a few days to speak more formally and discuss the next steps with the elders, following the respectful traditions of the village. After he left, Mira sat quietly under the neem tree, feeling a warmth she had never known. She touched the ground softly, trying to absorb what had just happened. Her world, which had always felt small and lonely, suddenly felt open and filled with possibilities. Shahnaz sat beside her daughter and held her hand tightly. She could barely speak, her heart overflowing with gratitude. "Allah has heard our prayers," she whispered, her voice shaking. But even in their joy, they both knew the village would not stay silent. News would spread. People would talk, some kindly, some cruelly. Challenges were ahead. But for the first time in Mira's life, she felt she wasn't facing them alone. Amir walked home that day with a clear mind. He had made his decision, and he felt at peace. But he also understood that his choice would shake the village. Many would question him. Some would whisper, but he didn't care. He was ready to stand firm, even if he stood alone. That evening, as he fed his cattle, his heart felt lighter than ever. He imagined a quiet home filled with calm conversation, shared work, and mutual respect. A home where Mira could be herself without fear, and where he could have a partner who understood the world's hardships without complaining. And so, the next chapter of their lives quietly began. Not with grand declarations, but with courage, acceptance, and hope, three things stronger than any gossip or judgment. The story was moving forward, and their paths were beginning to join in a way no one in the village had expected. Part 4 begins with the village slowly hearing the news that Amir had visited Shahnaz's home not once, but twice. People in small places notice everything quickly, and soon whispers began spreading from one house to another. Some were curious, some surprised, and some simply amused. A few even waited outside their homes, hoping to catch a glimpse of Amir passing by so they could exchange knowing looks with their neighbors. But Amir ignored all the noise. He had made up his mind, and he wasn't the type of man who changed decisions because of gossip. He believed that life was too short to let others choose your happiness. What mattered most to him was respect, understanding, and kindness, and Mira had all three. 3 days after their conversation in the courtyard, Amir woke before sunrise, washed his face with cold water from the clay pot, and prepared himself for a visit that meant much more than any other. He wasn't going as a friend or visitor now. He was going with intention, carrying a quiet certainty in his heart. By the time he stepped out of his house, the sky was glowing orange. Birds were waking. The air was cool, and the world felt fresh. Amir adjusted his shawl and began walking toward the village. During the walk, he didn't think about the people who might criticize him. He only thought about Mira's gentle voice, her honesty, and the way she carried herself with dignity, even after years of judgment. At the same time, in Shahnaz's house, the morning was different. There was a nervous excitement in the air. Shahnaz kept checking the courtyard, the gate, and the stove. She tried to keep herself busy, but her hands trembled with hope. Mira, on the other hand, moved quietly through the rooms. She couldn't calm her heart. Ever since Amir's last visit, her mind had been filled with questions, dreams, and worries. What if he changed his mind? What if people pressured him? What if she wasn't enough? But then she would remember the way he looked at her, not with pity or discomfort, but with respect. That memory calmed her fears each time. When the sound of footsteps finally echoed outside the gate, Shahnaz hurried out. She saw Amir standing there, holding a small bundle wrapped in cloth. He greeted her respectfully, and she welcomed him inside with trembling hands. This time, there was a different kind of silence in the house, heavier, deeper, full of meaning. Mira appeared from the inner room, her heart beating fast. She looked at Amir, and he gave her a calm smile. A smile that held reassurance, not pressure. Amir sat on the mat under the neem tree, and Shahnaz and Mira sat across from him. The breeze rustled the leaves gently, as if nature itself wanted to listen to what he came to say. Amir placed the small cloth bundle on the ground between them. "I brought something," he said softly. Shahnaz hesitated, and then opened the bundle. Inside was a simple silver ring. Nothing fancy or expensive, but polished and beautiful in its simplicity. Amir spoke in a steady voice. "This is not about wealth. This is about intention. I wish to ask formally, if Mira and her mother accept my proposal for a shared future." The ring wasn't just metal. It was years of prayers answered. It was the hope Shahnaz carried every night. It was the acceptance Mira never thought she would receive. Shahnaz burst into tears. She couldn't control herself. She pressed her hand to her mouth and cried silently, her heart overwhelmed with gratitude. Mira felt her eyes burn with emotion. She had never imagined someone would offer her such respect, such sincerity, such courage. Amir looked at Mira gently. "I am not asking you to be someone else. I want you to remain as you are, kind, hardworking, honest. That is all I need." Mira felt something warm and steady spread inside her chest. She lowered her eyes shyly and replied in a soft but clear voice, "If you truly want this, then yes, I accept." It was the first time she had ever said yes to such a question, and she said it with her whole heart. Amir smiled, a genuine, relieved smile. He stood up respectfully and touched Shahnaz's hands, asking for her blessing. Shahnaz prayed for him with shaking words, praying for his long life, health, and happiness. Afterward, Amir sat with them for a long time, discussing practical things, future plans, and how they wanted the next days to unfold. He didn't rush anything. He spoke openly, showing that his intentions were not temporary or emotional but thoughtful and stable. But outside their little home, the village was already buzzing. People were gathering near the well, discussing what they had heard. Some admired Amir's courage, saying he was a real man with a strong heart. Others gossiped out of habit, questioning why he made such a choice. A few even laughed quietly, failing to understand the depth of the situation. A group of men approached Amir later that day when he walked through the village. They tried to tease him, expecting he would feel uncomfortable. But Amir didn't even stop. He kept walking with calm pride. One of the older men, who respected Amir deeply, stopped him gently. "People will talk," he warned kindly. "Are you prepared for that?" Amir answered without hesitation. "When did I ever live my life to please others? I know what I am doing, and I am at peace with it." The old man smiled. "Then you have already won." In the following days, preparations began for a small, simple ceremony that would bring Mira and Amir together officially. Shahnaz cleaned the house with a level of energy she hadn't felt in years. She washed every pot, swept every corner, and decorated the entrance with handmade flowers. Her heart was full of joy, and her face glowed with new life. Mira helped quietly, still unsure if this was all real. Sometimes she would stop working and just sit for a minute, trying to understand how so much had changed in such little time. She felt nervous, but she also felt grateful. She wanted to do everything right. She wanted to make Amir proud. The villagers, whether supportive or not, didn't stay away. Some came to help, bringing sweets or flowers, saying polite things. A few came just to satisfy their curiosity, but Shahnaz accepted everyone with kindness, not letting anyone's hidden intentions disturb her happiness. Finally, the day arrived. It was early morning when Amir walked toward Shahnaz's house with a few elders from his side. He wore a clean kurta, simple but elegant. His eyes were steady, and his walk was firm. When he entered the courtyard, Mira stood there wearing a simple outfit, her hair neatly braided. She looked nervous but beautiful, in her natural, gentle way. The ceremony was small, just prayers, blessings, and agreements spoken sincerely. There were no grand decorations or loud music. Just quiet, joy. When Amir and Mira exchanged their vows, everyone felt something beautiful in the air. It wasn't a love story written with dramatic gestures. It was a story built on courage, respect, and understanding, Three things far more powerful than appearance or gossip. After the ceremony, Amir turned to Mira with a soft smile. "From today onward, we walk together," he said. Mira nodded, feeling peace wash over her. "Together," she replied. Shahnaz cried again, but this time the tears were only of relief. As the sun set that evening, Amir walked beside Mira toward his ranch, their steps slow and steady. The village watched them, some with admiration, some with surprise, but Amir didn't look back. He had chosen his path. Mira had found acceptance, and Shahnaz had lived to see her daughter receive the respect she deserved. Their story didn't end in the village's whispers. It ended in a new home, filled with quiet understanding, shared work, and peaceful companionship, and that was all they ever wanted.